Hi, I'm Melinda Van Fleet, and welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. I'm a success coach, speaker, and business consultant, and my husband Ryan and I were laid off at the same time 10 years ago. We moved to the Florida Keys without jobs, not knowing anyone, hardly any money, and we'd never even been here. But we made it, and now we're living our best lives. And all along on our journey, I've said that someday when we get our quote-unquote shit together, we will help others. Since then, we've both done a lot of self-work and built successful businesses. So that day is here, and one of my ways of paying it forward is through this podcast. Each week, my intent is to be relatable and bring you tactical tips, tools, share my learnings and stories that can help inspire or transform you wherever you are in your career or general life and make an impact. I strongly believe that if I can do it, you can do it too. So what's stopping you?
Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. That was a quote said by Martin Luther King Jr.
This week I have a very special guest, Regena Ozeryansky. She is multifaceted. She is a very successful real estate agent. She's a yoga instructor and shares her story of when she started yoga at the age of 15, which I think is extremely inspirational, especially if there's any parents out there or younger people listening to this podcast to get started with yoga at such a young age. And also, one of the main reasons why I really wanted to chat with her is she is a practitioner of a program called Soul Language that I had never heard of before. And if you listen to my podcast, you know that I love to dive into anything that is spiritual. So I'm going to get on with this very cool, enlightening conversation. And I just want to say thanks for listening. Hey, Regena.
Hi, Melinda. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. I'm so excited you're here with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, you are just this really multifaceted entrepreneur, which I personally love because I kind of feel that way about myself sometimes. So I was excited to get to connect with you via one of the groups that we're in together. So do you want to share a little bit about yourself with the audience and your background and all the different things you work on?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity. It's definitely a blessing to be here. And yeah, I am a recovering perfectionist, I like to say, first and foremost, because life isn't always perfect. So I have learned through my course of life experience that the best way to show up in life is, authentically, and my journey certainly has been that. So what I get to do now in the world with a lot of passion and purpose is I get to actually help teach people how to achieve internal peace. And I'm often known as the Internal Peace Revolutionist because I change the way the world experiences peace.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I love it. And I help coach people, and I work with over 50 different modalities, tools and techniques, helping people shift areas of their life that are not working and transition into areas that they're more purposeful and more really happier in their life, whether it's health, wealth, or spirituality.
Wow, that's cool. When you talk about the modalities, what are some of the different tools you use to help people?
It's a great question. So the one that I would say probably most people can connect with and understand is yoga, because it's been around for a really, really long time. And yoga's been actually around for like 5,000 years. And so there's a big, big history behind it. And so I've been trained in yoga. I'm actually working on my 500 hours certification, which means that I get to train trainers and teachers. And I love that. And I integrate Reiki and meditation and what I call soul journey work and soul language journey work, along with mindset coaching. And I put it basically all together in a nice box, and I call it my concoction, my little cocktail.
I love that. Because with yoga, you are amazing that you are so, I'm going to say, disciplined that you do your videos every morning, right? I don't think you've ever missed a morning since I started following you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, what's so cool about that is I wasn't always this consistent. In fact, I used to actually have a really hard time with commitment. And it wasn't until I started practicing yoga that I became much more intentional and much more disciplined about that. And at the time of this recording, there's a pandemic that's happening, and it's kind of taking the world by storm. And so it was my way of showing up for people and being able to say, here is something that I can offer to help calm people's nerves and hopefully reduce their stress and anxiety. And then it just became something like I was excited to get out of bed every day and share my yoga practice and do yoga with other people.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. And how long have you been practicing yoga in general?
So I've actually been a student since I was, probably 15. I actually took my first yoga class when I was 15. And I remember my teacher, she was actually a very slender woman, beautiful lady, and she was a Pilates teacher. And so back then, and still now, power yoga is actually what they call Pilates. And
Oh,
so it was more of a Pilates class than it was yoga, but I didn't know the difference. And I just remember her there was a sentence that it wasn't even a sentence, it was a word, and it was breathe. And I remember at 15 I was stressed, and I just remember being like, I'm not, maybe I'm an A-type personality, some people would say that. And even back then I remember just having such comfort when she would use the word breathe. And it's really what got me through high school. And yeah, there was so many times where I just look back and I remember her face and her poised appearance and the way she showed up for me. And she was just a really nice person, and beautiful on the inside and out. And I just remember wanting to be like her. And so it was funny because when I actually got my yoga teacher training certification, I still didn't believe it. I was like, this is so funny. Like, how the universe just puts us in places. Like, I'm sure you've probably had that, right? Where there's an area of your life that you're like, how did this happen? How did I get here?
yeah, definitely. But at 15, I'm just like dazzled and have this like wish that lots of young ladies, young girls could discover yoga, because I think that's so compelling that helped you with stress and anxiety. So who introduced you at that age? I never even heard of yoga when I was 15. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was actually, I'm very fortunate because it was actually at the gym. And I remember nobody in my family was doing yoga. So it wasn't like, somebody took my hand and said, let's go to a yoga class.
Uh-huh.
It was very organic and very, I guess, intuitive at that point. And I remember I used to love aerobics classes. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the day that I went, the class was canceled or something that I wanted, which was like a aerobics class. And so the only class that was on the schedule that I could attend was yoga. And I was like, no, I'm not really that into yoga.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because now it's like my whole life,
Right.
it's all the time. Like, people see me and, oh, that's the yoga girl, the yogi, the real estate yoga girl.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it definitely shaped me. And I wish, and I look forward to, actually not wish, but I look forward to helping more young ladies and young boys actually learn yoga, which is one of the reasons I love teaching kids, is because I think when we can instill those skills in children, and
Yes.
those, really powerful attributes and characteristics of discipline, and more than anything, of calmness, like helping give tools that they can use to support them in life. That's the most important. It's not about the poses. It's about the serenity and the peacefulness that comes to us,
Yeah.
because life is not always going to be peaceful. Like, most of the time it's not, actually.
Right. Right. No, that's beautiful. I truly didn't know that about your journey. And I don't have children. My husband and I don't have children, but I have two nieces. And when I stayed with them in February for a little under a week, I meditated with them. We pulled angel cards, just because I think, gosh, if I would have had that experience at their age, how much more mindful and calmer and be able to deal with situations better. So that's amazing that you had that personal experience and that you can share that with others. That's really cool. So,
Yeah, thank you. And especially now with everything going on, like more and more kids, I think, school is not so easy anymore. And being a teenager is not what it used to be. And so there's a lot more pressure now. And I think that teenagers especially have it really hard. And I think it's such a great gift when a parent or, a friend or a guardian, whoever it is, a teacher, can go ahead and share that gift with a teenager or a young adult. I think it's such a blessing. And I look forward to doing more work in that realm to help them.
yeah, no, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I really want to also dive into soul language, which we've kind of chatted about a little bit over Facebook Messenger and email. And I've watched your videos that you sent me, and you briefly mentioned it as one way to help people too. But I'm going to assume that most people are like me, never heard of it before. So can you kind of share some background in your journey with soul language and what that's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the soul language journey, it's very interesting. It's really abstract and it's very, as I call it, woo-woo. It's as woo-woo as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And I was growing up, I never thought of that. But when I ask people to describe me, they most of the time say that I'm pretty grounded and that I was very practical growing up. So it's interesting to me because I didn't always see that about myself, but that's I guess what it was. And so when the soul languages came to me, they came to me in a time not so long ago, actually, when I was going through a really rough time. 2019 was probably one of the worst, I would say, years of my life, in the sense that it was not worse in the sense, not worse. Let me take that back. It was one of the most impactful. It's probably a better word. So it was the most impactful because I had the most challenges. I had gone through a very serious depression in what year was it? I think it was 2011 or 2012. It was really intense. And then actually, no, it was 2014. No, it was before that. My gosh. Yeah. It was like 2010 or 2011, something like that. And then I thought that was over and done with. And then it came back in 2019 and it came back with a vengeance. It came like really, really strong. And I'm super grateful for it now because it's molded me into who I am and it became part of my path. And I actually thank you, soul languages. They showed up in my life and I thought they were coming to heal me, which they did, but they also came as messengers. And so I started actually learning more about them, and it's a modality that supports 107 languages. So just like we are speaking English right now,
Mm-hmm.
and in other parts of the world, there's different dialects. So a person can speak multiple languages, right? They'd be considered a poly, right? That where they're polylinguistic. So the soul languages, there's 107 of them, and we all have a combination of at least 3. So of those 107, we all have a set of 3, and we sometimes play in the realm of the other one. So it's kind of like personalities, where, you might have a personality trait that is very, let's say, compassionate or loving, but there's a part of you that's also very stern and very focused, right? So the primary languages, the 3 primary languages, are what a person would lead in life with.
Okay.
But all the others are available, and sometimes you pick those up and you, as I like to say, you quote unquote play with them. Like they show up in your life, and in different areas of your life, you could do, like, for example, in business, you might have a set of 3 languages that are different from the primary languages. And then you might have a set in your money language or your money realm that's different than your primary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very fascinating. And I just like my yoga, I didn't think I would be a teacher. Like, I didn't see that until they showed up. And so when they showed up, it was really clear to me. Like, the message was really, really crystal clear. You're going to be a teacher. And so I've recently looked into actually training trainers, similar to the yoga, where I would be teaching practitioners how to become soul language practitioners.
Wow. And when you say showed up, just for layman's terms, what does that mean? Like, you came across it on the internet, they knocked on your front door, like, it's just so.
No, it's super weird. It's like, what do you mean? Like, speak English. So when I say showed up, it's more like they entered my life, right? So they're not, you don't actually see them physically. They're not like physical entities, but they're very energetic. So I'm a very visual person. And since I started working, like, okay, let me back up a step. So we each have, like, when they talk about the 6th sense.
Yes.
Right? There's 5 senses. There's touch, sight, sound, smell, and then there's
Hearing.
Taste, right?
Sorry.
So there's 5, 6. Yeah, exactly. So there's really 6, and some say there's 7. So the 6th is intuition. And the 6th is intuition. And what happens with the soul languages is they actually intuitively arrive. And depending on what level of gift, I'll use the word gift. We all have gifts. Some of us have the gift of sight. Some of us have the gift of audio, clairvoyance. Some of us have the gift. So there's all these different types of, I call them clairvoyance gifts, right? Like, some people can see. And usually when we talk about this, people think of psychics, because they don't think that, and like a layman person or normal, I call them normal people, right? They don't think of normal people as having these gifts. But the truth is, we all have them. It's just a muscle. It's just like having, like, bicep muscles, right? Like, we all have the muscles, and it's just some people have those muscles a little bit stronger and more exercised than the others. So a person who's very gifted and has a very strong sense of sight will probably be able to see visions in the future, versus a person who has a very high level of hearing capacity. They might hear sounds. And then the other person might be kinesthetic, where they feel stuff. Like, if you hear a person talk in terms of, they say, I have a feeling, I have a gut feeling. So we all have a combination of all of them. But again, we each have 1 or 2 that are primary. And so the soul languages, how they show up for me is I see visions. So I actually see pictures of them, and each one of them looks different. So how you see them might be different how I see them, which is where it gets a little complicated, because it's like, well, which one do you see, right? Like, if somebody walks in the door, we both know who it is because they have a face.
Right.
And we can tell by the color of their hair, the color of the eyes. But if it's a soul language, and let's say you see, like, for example, I'll give one. So one of my soul languages is troubadour, which is storyteller, right? So it's really cool, because I've always been a writer, and I didn't know when I was a kid why I loved writing so much. But when people would ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would say, I want to be an author, right? Which now I write, and I'm a published author and speaker. And so it's really funny, because at the time when I was a kid, I just thought I wanted to grow up and be a writer, like a creative writing author. I didn't think it was for any reason other than I just liked writing. Wow. But if you look at Yeah, exactly. Like if you look at the connection, why do some people want to be doctors? Because there's something in them that they're born with that gives them that impulse, that gives them that seed, that desire.
Mm-hmm.
That's different than somebody who, let's say, wants to be a truck driver.
Sure.
So it's very cool. It's super fascinating. And it's, like I said, it's very abstract. So it's kind of like when people say, well, can you do it? Like, can you give me an example? It's like, it's kind of like giving a haircut over the phone.
Uh-huh.
It's like, it's really hard to explain. And clearly with Corona and COVID-19, there's a lot of people actually doing all kinds of stuff. Like I heard of like, you know, dentists and doctors seeing their patients online. So anything is possible, right? And even haircuts.
Someone's going to figure out how to give a haircut over Zoom any day now.
Right. Exactly. So I'm sure there's a way. As of now, it's still a fairly new modality in the sense that it's only been around for a few years, and it was founded actually by a woman in New Jersey. Her name is Jennifer Urizio, and to me it's really fascinating work. I love the work, and I love what it stands for. Yeah.
So tell us about your soul languages, if you don't mind, if it's something you'd rather not, and then tell or try to explain, you know, do people take a series of tests? How long does it take to work with someone like you, a practitioner? Like, what's the actual like tactical piece? Like, how would you describe that to come up with their 3 soul languages? And then I know I'm rambling a lot of questions here, but I'm like fascinated.
Oh, that's okay. I love it.
and then describe how you, well, let's put it this way, put in your words how you would describe what someone would benefit from doing this. So I get that, but I want the audience to kind of understand, like, why would you do
great
this?
question.
Why would you work with Regena to understand your soul language? So kind of like the ins and outs so people can really kind of understand.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you so much. I love the questions. So absolutely. So my languages are I've had a bunch of them done in the sense that I've had my money languages, I've had my business languages, I've also had sacred partnership languages done, which is a relationship you have with another person. And you have languages there too, right? So like when you think about relationships between partners, it could be romantic partners, it could be friends, it could be business partners, it could be mother daughter, you know, father son. So it could go infinite ways, which is really cool. So my primary languages are, bear with me a moment because they're so part of me that I forget sometimes.
Yeah.
So my primary languages are producer provider and negotiator and troubadour. And each one, so we have what's called axiom of quest, axiom of translation, and then you have tone, which is how it shows up. So yeah, so like my producer, my negotiator is my axiom of quest. So that's makes total sense. Like in business, like I work, you know, in real estate was my background. So, and I still have a real estate team, and I love real estate, and our team is actually growing, which is super cool. So it's really useful for me in business because I deal with contracts, right? And agreements and deadlines and stuff. So for the longest time, I didn't know why, but I loved the negotiating part of real estate. Like I love making things happen. I love helping buyers and sellers get what they want and creating a win-win.
Oh, wow.
So it was really neat when I had that revealed, because it was like, oh, that makes total sense. Like, that's why I'm like that, you know?
Yeah.
And then
you're passionate about that. That's cool.
Yeah, it was super cool. And then producer provider, and I made a mistake. I shared my money language and my business language. So my primary is actually, and I know it doesn't matter to you guys, to the listeners, and to you, Melinda, because it's all the same. But I just want to make sure that I'm in integrity with the languages themselves. So it's negotiator, teacher of integrity, and then producer provider. So my teacher of integrity, just like what I just did, it's so funny. I didn't realize as I was doing it, but my teacher of integrity always is like almost like mother, like the nun.
Oh,
Like,
you
like,
cannot tell a
can you see how
lie.
I just did that?
You cannot tell a lie. That's awesome.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
nobody's gonna know, right? But I
Right,
know.
right.
So
But
it's
you still knew. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Great
so that was
example.
exactly it. Like, how perfect is that? That just showed up. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't have scripted that if I tried. That was
Right.
so funny. So that's my teacher of integrity, and then my producer provider is the part of me that, which is very, very accurate. It's like if you give me, a shoestring, I'll figure out 10 ways to use it. Right?
Oh. So
Like I might not always say it again.
resourcefulness, like you're able to
Yes.
like figure shit out. Wow.
Yeah, which I didn't always think that about myself, but as I got through, and I don't have the podcast. Well, actually, that's not true. I just created the trailer for it. One of the podcasts that I want to create is actually called "Turning Your Messes into Successes," and
Oh,
it's
wow.
about that very thing. Yeah, like I've had tons of disasters, like tons, in business, in personal. Like, I mean, there's been so many things that I've done that it wasn't even necessarily that. Yes, a lot of them I created, right? Because I believe in the law of attraction. We create our situations. But I also think that life happens. And like in 2019, there was a lot of stuff that it was out of my control. Like there was nothing I could have done. And the only option I had was to choose to make it right, choose to make it good, and make lemonade out of lemons.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot like our time now, right? Like there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of people that are focused on the negative, and then there's a whole myriad of people that are focused on the positive and creating impact,
Right.
and positivity. So, I think that's been a real blessing with the producer provider, because it really helps me navigate the waters of life and allows me to see that everything's a choice, and I'm not a victim. Like no matter what, like there's always a way out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so true, and such a great mindset to have. That's really, really important. Absolutely. So then
Thanks. I liked it.
how did you, yeah, how did you come about like the actual, like I kind of said before, is there like quizzes and workbooks and worksheets, or is it readings that get you to this point of knowledge and understanding your soul languages? How does that actually work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the way it works is it's a very intuitive process, in the sense that what I do is I don't like to call it a reading, because it's not really, it's not like a horoscope reading, even though the languages sometimes are considered to be kind of similar to horoscopes. It's not a reading per se, but what I do is it's a 4-step process. So someone will say, okay, Regina, I'd like to have my soul languages um, done, or whatever the word is. I'd like to meet them. I'd like to have that experience. And what it does is, the best way I can describe it is it's a form of communication with your soul. So it actually really helps you connect with your soul so that you can live much more in alignment in life. Decisions become easier, choices get like laser focused, clarity. I mean, there's so much that happens for people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really cool. So it's a 4-step process. So what I do is I meet them first, or the first step is actually a person would say they're ready. They want to meet them. So acknowledging that you want to meet them.
Yeah, that's huge.
Which means they want to meet you too, right? It's like a relationship. So it's like meeting your soulmate, but it's your soul committee, as I like to say. So they've been waiting for you just like you've been waiting for them. And so that's the first step. The second step is I meet them, and I do a very it's a very simple process, but it's very intuitive, where I actually do some body work through me, and in the body work they show up. And through muscle testing, and also through some kinesthetics type exercises, they show up for me, they get revealed, and I do like a balance and I call it balance and check process to make sure that it's a verified language for that person.
Okay.
And then the third step is I then send a report to the participant or the person, right? So like, let's say if I was doing it for you, I would send you a report with the 3 languages, and then you get a chance to review. And then the fourth step is we actually schedule a call or a Zoom, and we actually meet, and that's where I introduce you to them.
Gotcha.
So I meet them first, and then I introduce them.
Oh. And then when you meet, what do people normally, I know you mentioned like clarity, so share again, like what do people really get from this? Because that's the part I totally understand. I get that, because, and this is different, granted, but at least it's a parallel I can draw in my mind, that I have had readings. I had a reading with a medium, so I get the general gist, and personally get so much clarity. It's insane. So that's why too I was fascinated by learning more about the program, because I'm like, gosh, if more and more people could understand that modalities and programs and however you want to bucket it, just really help you with your life, that's what the amazing gift is, right? It's so amazing, and it's kind of shocking to me how most people don't know anything about this. So
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, and myself included. Like I tell you, it wasn't a very easy process for me to accept all of this woo stuff. Like I remember I was probably in my early 20s. I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 next year. And it's so weird to say that. And I was like in my 20s, and I always felt like I was a little different. Like even as a kid, I was very independent, and I was very, some would say like I was more mature for my age, right? And I had like older friends, and I always felt like I was a little bit of the black sheep, like odd man out or odd girl out. And in my 20s, I started to accept that there was a reason, and I was different, right? And these might be gifts, these might be opportunities. So I started to really own that. And then when I was like mid 20s, I started noticing that I had like physical sensations in my body during certain things that would happen.
Oh, wow.
Like someone would say something, or I would walk into a room and then it was just bad juju, and I would feel it all over my body. And at first I was like, okay, this is really freaky and trippy, and like I don't really want this. Like I don't want these gifts, And at the time I didn't know that they were gifts. I thought that I was just weird. And in talking with more light workers and friends of mine, they explained to me that was it. Like that was the gift. Was I was sensitive and I was very empathic, so I could feel other people's energy, and there were ways that I could still protect myself, which is what I teach now. As I teach people these tools like shielding, I teach people soul language, I teach people Reiki, like all these different things. I'm a Reiki master, and so all of these tools and elements that strengthen the relationship. So soul language journey work is just one of the tools, but it changes people's lives. Like it really offers so much. And I love that you asked, because it is a lot to wrap your head around, because it's not something we see. It's not physical. It's not like you go in the store and you buy a new lamp or a new computer or like a car, right? You come home, you know exactly what you bought.
Right.
It's right in front of you. Intuitive gifts, it's a feeling. And, really when someone, the best example I can give is when someone asks you, how do you know when you're in love? You just know.
Such a great example. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's the best way that I've been able to classify and communicate to people the experience, because it's like you just wake up with your eyes more clear, and not just your physical eyes, but your heart and your intuition, like your sixth chakra is open, you know, your crown chakra and your third eye are open to seeing things. You're more awake, you're more aware. And especially right now with life, like, I really believe everybody deserves to be more aware and more awake.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean awake like, you know, like
Yeah.
obviously we're awake, but your listeners, right? Your listeners are awake. I know they are because of the way you show up in the world. So for anyone that wants to go deeper into the process of themselves and getting to know them, like, to me, the most important relationship we will ever have is with ourselves.
Mm.
Because you could have the most amazing, sensational, sexy, passionate relationship and not be happy because you're not happy with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that, you know, old adage of you can't love anybody until you love yourself, it's really true. It's not just a cliche, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so my experience with the soul language journey work and the students that I've helped is that they feel more in alignment with their purpose, with their essence, who they are as a human, and in, how do I say, in the ripple effect, they get more peace at work. They get more peace in their relationships. They are happier in their health. They make better decisions. There's more clarity. They're more focused. They have more energy. Like, all of those are just side effects
Mm-hmm.
of the main objective, which is more alignment with the true self.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful. That's a great way to sum it up. Thank you. And
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's so fun to
yeah,
like talk about it. And yeah, it's so fun. Like, even just as we're discussing it, it's like it makes me so delighted and so honored that I get to do this work, because this is, to me, this is like what we're all here for, right?
yeah. And you're so right. I mean, I just think back to any time I've had a tarot card reading, anytime, anything, like, there's so many signals and signs and things that were said or I learned that just compiled to help me on my journey, right? To make me understand more about myself. And, you know, I could go down a whole rabbit hole here, but just keeping it simple, you know, when you start to get some clarity from these other sources, like a soul language can provide, it just really helps you just be happier and more at peace, and just even nicer. I don't know, just like come from a place of kindness. If you start to realize just, you know, how you are and how you behave, it helps you manage that better, right?
Yeah, and it's so true. Like, it's that simple, right? Like, when people say, "Well, what is it?" It's more joy, more happiness. Like, that's the best way to say it, is like, everything is that. You
Yeah.
know, like, when people ask me, "What do I do?" It's funny because I'm like, "Oh, I make people happy."
Yeah, totally.
Like,
Right?
but that's what I do. It's like, I help people find happiness and joy. And,
Mhm.
you know, it's really earthy, crunchy, and, you know, tree hugger. And I never thought I would be that, but it's really cool. Like, you know, and it doesn't mean that every moment is that. Like, I don't want people to think that, you know, it's all Pollyanna. I mean, sorry, not Pollyanna. That it's all a different podcast. That it's well, yeah, like, you
Yeah,
know,
gotcha.
like, yeah, like rainbows
Sunshine
and,
and roses. Yeah.
yeah, like, it is a lot of the time, but there's reality of life. Like,
Yes.
you're gonna get upset once in a while. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, or, you know, your partner doesn't put the dishes away, or your kid gets an F. Like, of course you're gonna be upset, but you're gonna come back to what's important in this moment.
Hmm. Yeah.
and and the amount of, like, letting go is so much easier and so much more rapid, because people understand when they do this work that this is what life is about. This is the work. Spiritual work is the work.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. If you do the work in this avenue and use these tools over time, that's when you see the results. And also I feel it just takes the pressure off when you can come from a place of understanding. It just takes away the pressure, which then helps with the anxiety and the stress and all those other things. So, well, this has
Yeah.
been fascinating. Thank you so much. Wow. Anything else you want to share about the program? And I definitely want you to share a mantra with the audience before we wrap it up as well. So,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Melinda. This was so much fun. And I guess the last thing is, what do I want people to know is I want them to know that their reason for being here is to be your highest self. And whatever you need to do to get there, like letting go of what doesn't serve you. And that could be people, that could be stuff, that could be belief systems. And it's possible. I mean, I didn't think that 5 years ago I'd be who I am, but I always knew that girl existed because I thought about her.
yeah.
So if you're listening to this, it's because you have something waiting for you. There's another version of you out there. There's another version of all of us that we haven't met yet. And how exciting to get to know that side of us. And, the mantra that I love the most is super simple. And it's be love.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Be love.
Yeah.
Be love for yourself too. Love yourself. It goes in so many
Yep.
different directions with that. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for having me. And
Yes.
I would
Thank
love
you.
to help support anybody here. It's actually really easy to reach me. If it's okay to share.
Yeah, I was just gonna say yep, totally. I already
Cool.
said, please share your information for sure. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So the best way to reach me is I actually have a really simple tool that I use, which is text. And you can text the number. It's a 5-digit code. And you can text the word yoga to 64600. And I have free gifts on there. And I also have weekly updates that I send, and just stuff that I love to share with people. And you can reach me there. And I'm also right now I am offering free yoga online, and it's at 8:15 Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. So I'd love for anyone listening to join me and let me know how you heard about it, so I'll know that you're one of Melinda's peeps, and we can thank Melinda for that. And thank you so much for having me today. It's been super fun.
Yes, thank you so much. You're amazing. And I'm just
Thank you.
so excited for you on this journey. Like I just think that's awesome. And if you saw my head bobbing, if we were on camera, you would have seen my head bobbing along to so much of what you said. So I really hope that anyone listening, like you said, starts to think about this type of journey in terms of just discovering more about themselves so they can live their best lives. I think that's key. And I'm happy personally that I have, and that's why I love sharing more information like Regena and her story and what she offers so other people can do the same. So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much.